So the kind of guns that are used in IPSC, again, like I said, the standard is the 1911. Everyone likes to shoot the 1911 because, first of all, it's a handgun that points very naturally to your hand. So do we have a 1911 here?
Yes.
Yeah, Frank's gonna get us a 1911. So that's what everyone started shooting back in the 70s. And then what happens is that then they discover putting a comp on it, which is a compensator, basically an extension beyond the barrel that vents the gas up, right? So the Ventura principle, essentially when, so this is, this is basically like a 1911, the same as a Code 45 that the U.S. government adopted in 1911, which is why it's called 1911. So that's what it started. It started with that, and then the guys started putting comps on it. And they were still shooting single stack, so 7 in the magazine, 1 in the chamber, 8. And then in probably early 80s, the big invention at that point was that same magazine that fitted 7 rounds, they were able to fit 8 rounds in it. And it was like, ooh, now we have 8 rounds to shoot from, right? So they shot that for the longest time. And then what they discovered was that because the 1911 shoots the 45, which is a heavy, slow bullet. So it doesn't actually produce enough pressure to make the best use of the compensators that the shooters were putting on their guns. So people started shooting 38 Super, which is a gun of caliber sort of like a 9mm, but slightly longer. And what that allows people to do is put more powder in the bullet. More powder equals more gas, and then the compensator works better. So essentially what happens is when you shoot a gun, bang, no matter who shoots it, slide's gonna go back, the gun's gonna tilt up, and then come back down, and you fire it again. What the comp does is that when you fire it, the gas is gonna vent up, and then the gun's not gonna flip as much. So people start shooting that, but still shooting single stack, like 8 rounds. If you shoot 9mm or 38, it's 9 rounds, like it's not a lot. And then what happens is in the 80s, and this is where actually, it's a sort of intersect with Toronto. There's a company in Scarborough actually called Para Ordnance. So this is a company started by a Czech immigrant to Canada. So what he did was that he designed a frame, so this is the bottom part of 1911, where everything else stays the same except this part, and it gets a bit wider. So now instead of 8 rounds in the magazine, you could put 14 rounds in the magazine, and he was selling it as like a kit. And from that, that basically, just threw IPSC into another level. From that, the Americans took it over in a company called Trip Research, later on STI and SVI, which would be sort of essentially the standard of what we call 2011s. Essentially, what it is a modular frame. So there's a frame here, and then the grip is a different part, but what you're able to do is make the grip wider, and so you could stuff a lot more rounds in it. So this would be essentially a 2011 STI design. This is Terran Tactical. Terran, when he started this, was basically essentially using STI parts to make it work. So, and from that just sort of exploded the whole game, because instead of shooting 7 or 8 rounds, now you're shooting like 20 plus rounds per gun. So, and then, but what happens is, as all these guns get introduced, different divisions get introduced into the sport. So it started with everyone shot one type of gun. There's no division. You know, the 45, and that was it. And later on, as I said, people start putting comps on the gun. And so they said, well, okay, so we have comp guns and guns without comps. And then the comp guns are called the open gun. And people start putting like the really old-fashioned red dot sights. I mean, those things were huge and heavy. But then, you know, basically open guns, anything goes. You could put whatever modification you want with it. So there's that open gun and standard guns. For the longest time, wasn't until, oh, and this is an open gun where, you know, you have a red dot sight, you have these holes here. So instead of extended comp, what happens here is that these are called hybrid barrels, so you just drill holes in the barrel. So you shoot, the gas comes out, and it pushes the front of the slide down. From open and standard in 2000, they started introducing a new division called production. And essentially, I mean, at that time it was basically called the Glock division. Everyone shot Glock at that time. And you know, that had to do with basically, you know, Glock becoming really popular. And then what, you know, ends up happening is that they start setting all these rules as far as what you could put in a production gun, what you can't put in a production gun. So this would be, you know, standard production gun. This is like a, you know, one of the newer Glocks, but it essentially hasn't changed. And then from that, we went to production optics, which is these same guns, but you could put a red dot sight on it. So, and you know, and then basically, you know, the race just sort of begins from there. So you have revolvers, you have modified, which is sort of like a really weird gun that, as far as I know, no one else shoots except Thais and Filipinos. And as of last war shoot, they started introducing a new division called optics division, which essentially it's what it's going to work out to is that anything goes in an optic division, but you can put a comp on it. So anything other than a comp, it doesn't need to fit in the box, doesn't need to fit anything. It's go. So for IPSC, we have these targets with 3 sizes. Classic, the mini. These are the 2 that you would shoot in IPSC competition for handguns. And this little guy would be what you would shoot in airsoft if the stage designer decides to be mean. So one thing I should say, IPSC isn't just not handguns, right? So you have IPSC rifles, which are mainly like AR-15s. The good old days when we could shoot that, and then when, you know, you can shoot it AR-15, PCC, which is pistol caliber carbine, was really popular. You know, of course, it's essentially an AR, but a 9mm. That was, you know, going really strong in Ontario for a few years. And then, of course, all those guns get whatever, prohibit. So no one gets to shoot that anymore. Shotgun is another type of competition that's really popular in IPSC, especially these days. So there are IPSC shotgun competitions. A new thing that we're seeing more and more in Ontario are mini rifles, which are rifles that, again, look like AR-15, but shoots 22. And the great thing about mini rifles is that certain models you could put 25 rounds into it. And then Action Air is, another discipline of IPSC, right? So with rifles, with all different kind of rifles, with different kind of handguns, but we're essentially shooting the same targets. So these targets now only have 3 zones. There used to be a B zone, but there's this A zone, a C zone, and a D scoring zone, right? So the main difference with these is that depending on the kind of guns that you use, it scores differently. So if you shoot an open gun or a standard gun and you're shooting major, when you hit the A zone, it's 5 points. When you hit the C zone, it's 4, and when you hit the D zone, it's 2. And if you shoot anything in 9mm, the A zone still scores the same. So if you could hit the A zone, you're not at a disadvantage, but then it goes to 3 and 1. 3 for the C zones and 1 for the D zone. And our scoring is called Comstock scoring, which is essentially your hits, if you have, so it's usually 2 hits per target. So if you have 2 A's, that's 5 plus 5, so that's 10 points. And depending on how many targets you're shooting, and then we divide it by how quickly you do it, the time. It used to be, and in the States, they still do it. So when I go down to the States, they still have a thing called Virginia count. And what Virginia count is that, so this one, on Comstock, we said we're going to score 2 best hits. You could shoot at the target 20 times, if you like, and I'm still going to score the 2 best hits. In Virginia count, it states that you can only shoot at a target twice. So if you miss a target, you don't get to make it up anymore. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that we no longer use. And again, thing that we used to have, the Americans are still doing, is called fixed time. So fixed time usually means that, so it'd be fixed time Virginia count. So they give you 10 targets where you have to, run around to get. And they would try to figure out the best guy would probably do it in 10 seconds. So they say, well, fixed time will make it 9 seconds. So after 9 seconds, any shots fired after 9 seconds becomes a penalty. So basically, you just have to either, if you're young, run really hard, or if you're old like me, you just decide on, how many good hits you can hit on the target, and that's it, right? So that's the basic scoring. It's called Comstock scoring. So beside paper, we also shoot steel. We shoot poppers and mini poppers, and we shoot plates in handgun, in IPSC handguns. It's basically the same thing in Action Air, except in Action Air you guys use a stock plate, and we don't use a stock plate in handgun. And as far as scoring, if you guys shot any of the matches here, you know that practice score is sort of the standard that a lot of people use, especially in North America. It's fairly simple to use. It's an open source software, and actually one of the main developer of it, Eugene, lives in Toronto. Like he shoots a lot around town. So he's a lot of contribution. It's a pain in the ass, but that's something else. So, and the other thing that we use to score is a system called ESS, and that's a system that generally gets used in the level 4 and 5 matches. We use them once in a while here. The major disadvantage with ESS is that you need network connection for all your tablets. So Whereas with practice score, someone could come and sync each tablet manually, but ESS needs the net connection. Now, what's great about ESS, especially for someone like me, is that I could just pull out my phone and I know exactly what's happening at the whole match. Like I might have like 9 bays, but I know how many shooters, like who's shooting at each bay. It gives, you know, the match organizer a lot of control over the the overall sort of organization of the match. And just so from that, scores get uploaded for Ontario. We get uploaded to our website. We have a calendar that you could check out all the matches. If any one of you are interested, I could show you on my phone later what the calendar looks like, and you basically sign up for matches on the calendar.